Hi! Today we are back with another video, and I thought it would be fun to react to some 2026 trend predictions. I did this before with various magazines like Vogue, that sort of thing, but instead today I wanted to react to the Pinterest Predicts 2026 trends. There's a list of 21 trends, I believe, and it's a mix of style and fashion, lifestyle, interior design. Today we're just going to be focusing on the fashion parts. So overall, today we're going to be scrolling the list together. We'll chat a little bit about it. I'll give some of my own personal opinions on it, and all around it'll be a chill, chatty kind of video. So without further ado, let's get into it. By the way, if you see me looking over here, it's because my laptop is here and this is where I have all the trends pulled up. So our first one is Gimme Gummy. In 2026, we're going full on gummy. Gen Z and millennials are behind this ASMR overload. Think bendy phone cases, elastic cheek tints, and probiotic treats that have that spring back bite. Expect rubberized nail art and 3D jewelry to become your new tactile obsession. So all around, this concept is essentially edible fashion, specifically gummy candies. And I think this is cute. I still think it's very sort of Y2K inspired, which has sort of been, at the forefront of trends generally for the past 5 years, really. So visually it doesn't feel that distinct or different from things we've seen in the past in terms of the colors and textures, that sort of thing. It's definitely a specific kind of look. So it might not be the most wearable thing for everybody, but I can appreciate its vibrancy, I guess, and the fact that it's colorful. I feel like this is very DIY and thrift friendly as well. All around, this is a trend I don't really see myself participating in. But I could see this being fun if your style leans in the more decora, is that the right term? Like that colorful, candy coated sort of vibe. Like I said, not my thing personally, but I would be intrigued, I guess, to see where people take this trend. Our next trend is called Glamourati. The decade of decadence is back in style, and honestly, it's about time. Tailored suits with sculpted shoulders will grow 3 sizes. Funnel necks will be the base of every outfit, and jewelry, well, that'll get chunkier, bolder, and golder. Gen Z and millennials are driving this maximalist aesthetic. Okay, so this feels very Mob Wives aesthetic. And I just finished watching Sopranos. Oh my god. But the timing in reading that and me finishing the show is funny because all I could see was the wardrobe of Sopranos reading that. So this is kind of familiar territory. I feel like there's been some discourse around this kind of fashion and style for a few years now. And of course, trends are cyclical. This kind of thing always comes back around eventually. So the very rich 80s sort of maximalist vibe, of course, it's bound to make a comeback. And from what I can recall of the trend video I did last year, there was some similar kind of predictions kind of in line with this vibe. So it makes sense that we're seeing a continuation of that. And I like to incorporate aspects of this. I have a pretty wild, fluffy leopard coat. I have some little snake print kitten heels. I've got hoops, that kind of thing. So I think aspects of glam, bold, luxury, that's fun to incorporate into my style once in a while. But a head to toe look, that's not necessarily something that feels the most me. A fit that Adriana on Sopranos would wear. Not necessarily something I feel like I could pull off. But again, it's kind of, one of those styles I appreciate it on other people. It's definitely a dedicated look. Again, this feels very thrift friendly, so I love that. If 80s styles are trending, I really encourage you to try to go to the thrift and find something like that there. Blazers, you know how easy it is to thrift a blazer. You don't need to buy it from a fast fashion brand like Zara or H&M. Very, very accessible items at the thrift. Same with that kind of jewelry. You can find a lot of that sort of thing at antique shops. So all around, I think this is a fun sort of style to play around with. I like to incorporate it in small doses. But yeah, I think with how casual fashion has moved over the years, I do think it's fun to play around with a more glamorous dressed up sort of style. Something I like to do once in a while when I can. So all around, I think this is a fun trend. Next trend is called Poetcore. Aspiring authors assemble. In 2026, Gen Z and millennials will channel their inner protagonist with oversized turtlenecks, vintage blazers, and messenger satchels. Oh, and don't forget the fountain pen. Consider this your aesthetic MFA, no student loans required. Okay, so this is academia. It's just rebranded academia. I don't even know what the purpose of this is. Because there's nothing really distinct about like poet versus academia in this case. What they're describing is the same exact style. So yeah, I don't really get this one. I do like aspects of academia fashion because a lot of it, I mean, is just very classic. You know, blazers, turtlenecks, these are just very, you know, classic, timeless pieces. You know, that is mostly what academia fashion centers around, and Poetcore doesn't really seem to be any different. I think it's just boredom is what it is. Or like we've seen everything, so let's just start calling it new shit. Not even like fashion that's inspired by poetry. This is just like academia, so you know, fine, but just a little boring. Our next trend is called broached. It appears I'm on trend. There's a new way to wear your heart on your sleeve, or tie, or socks. In 2026, boomer and millennial men will punctuate their fits. Okay. Vintage pins, crystal clip-ons, and heirloom brooches. It's part homage, part reinvention. If your grandma wouldn't wear it, is it even the vibe? Obviously a fan of this one. I feel like this has been on the come up for some time now too. We've been seeing this increase in trendiness, more in mainstream fashion, on runways, that kind of thing. Been seeing pins, buttons, brooches styled a lot on musicians. So this doesn't surprise me to hear that this is, you know, like going further, developing into a bigger trend and not just, you know, like a micro trend, you know, which something can be a signature part of your style, whether it's deemed trendy at the time or not. So this is obviously another pretty timeless item, but it is fun in a trend sense because it's, again, very accessible, perfect secondhand kind of thing. Go to thrift stores, antique stores, very easily can find buttons, pins, brooches. I've always said I prefer like an accessory as a trend versus like a clothing item, just because it takes up less space, it's less waste, less to produce. A lot of these items are great to purchase secondhand, like I said. So I think if you're experimenting with your style, like a little accessory is a fun way to go about it, a more sustainable way to go about it, cheaper as well, takes up less space. So if you haven't tried styling something like this before, you know, just start small, see if it's something you like. All in all, the investment and the risk is not that big, so I would encourage you to try it if you haven't before. But this is something that I style often. I'm definitely a bit of a maximalist, if you couldn't tell. So I'm like the more the merrier usually when it comes to buttons and pins. And I have like a fun little drawer of them. I like to mix and match and alternate them, put them on different things. That's one cool thing about this is, like the description said, you can put it on just about anything. A hat, your tie, your jacket, your shirt, your top. So I think this is fun. Kind of like bag charms when that first started and it was a more like organic thing. You got to see a lot of people's personalities through them, and that's something that I love about this. I feel like you can tell so much about a person just based off a couple brooches and pins that they have. So all around, I love this trend. I will obviously be rocking this trend. Definitely my favorite on the list so far. Our next trend is called laced up. The doily makes its big debut in 2026, bringing an unexpected elegance to absolutely everything. Bomber jackets will get lacy collars, bandanas will be softly stitched, and even phone cases will go crochet. Gen Z and millennials are driving this trend, gently reminding us that more is more, especially when it's this pretty. I love this trend. I love this idea. Again, very secondhand DIY friendly, which I love. I see doilies all the time and I want to improve with like my ability to make and craft and alter clothing. It's not the most intuitive thing for me, but I have seen people make like dresses out of doilies and stuff, and I think that's so pretty. There's so much secondhand fabric waiting to be repurposed, and lace is one of those things where it's like the older it is, the more beautiful it is. At least I think so. All around though, it's like a beautiful material to work with. Love lace, love crochet. Definitely materials that have a place in my wardrobe for sure. I have lots of little lace cover-ups, cardigans, that sort of thing. I do love the DIY element though of like adding a little bit of lace to a jacket. I think that's so fun. So I will definitely have to play around with that idea more, see if I can come up with any ideas myself. But again, a pretty accessible trend. Another timeless thing too. Like you don't really have to worry about lace going out of style ever, or crochet. And I love like an antique, Victorian, romantic gothic sort of feeling aesthetic. So all around visually, this is something like I really quite enjoy. Yeah, big fan of this one. Next trend is called Vamp Romantic. Considering I've made a video all about vampiric fashion, safe to say I'm probably going to jive with this one. But they write, beauty bites back with this 2026 trend. Millennials and Gen Z will go all in on an after dark aesthetic, embracing jet black nails, romantic goth hairstyles, and a smudged coal smoky eye, all with a touch of glossy glamour. Who says you can't be both haunting and heartbreaking? Yeah, completely up my alley, as to be expected. I do have a Scorpio moon, you know, for my astrology girlies. So a dark, sort of moody, gothic, macabre element is always present within my style. I love a moody, dramatic look. I love dark makeup, dark nails, all the fabric and jewelry and clothing choices. There's so much room to play around in this kind of aesthetic. Also really fun to watch vampire movies, things like that, read old novels to get inspired. And I think things like this are really fun as a trend because, again, it's not a specific item, it's more of a broader concept. So you can apply it to your beauty, your hair, your clothing, your jewelry. There's a lot of ways to play around with it and personalize it and go about it in a way that is accessible to you. There's a lot of fairly inexpensive makeup as well out there. So if you were new to this sort of style and didn't know where to start, you know, you can kind of dip your toe in, maybe try a cool necklace or some eyeliner. But all around, you know, I guess as a self-described alternative person, sort of vampiric, gothic, romantic styles, those are like always going to be something that I enjoy and incorporate. But all around, I am curious to see where people take this, especially in a place like Runway. But all around, totally my vibe. Really enjoy this one. Next trend is called Cool Blue. Meet the shade that refuses to warm up to anyone. Gen Z and millennials are bringing a sub-zero sophistication to absolutely everything in 2026. Think cool-toned coats, glacier-inspired accessories, and the frostiest of cocktails. Temp drop we've all been waiting for. So basically it's just a baby blue, sky blue. I guess that's a trending color. And it's fine. It's not my favorite shade of blue. All around like an icy blue color, you know, styling that for winter, it feels very like florals for spring. So all around I'm pretty bored by this one. But overall, it's fine. Really don't have too much to say about this one, honestly. It's blue. Okay. Next trend is Glitchy Glam. Perfect winged liner. She doesn't go here. This year, beauty is missing the mark on purpose. Gen Z and millennials will rock mismatched manicures, two-toned lipstick, and bright eyeshadow in two binary hues, so long symmetry. This idea I think is fun. I think especially with the whole like clean girl sort of thing taking over everything in terms of fashion and beauty, I'm pretty relieved to see something more artistic and expressive and creative take the mainstream when it comes to makeup. I really like this idea. I think it's really fun and playful and very accessible, DIY friendly. Lots of good drugstore makeup nowadays, you know, so if you don't have a lot of makeup, if you're not a makeup person, you know, you can always start small. But as a makeup lover, someone who's very into makeup, I think this is a fun concept to play around with and something that I experiment with from time to time. I can be a bit of a perfectionist, especially when it comes to like stuff like eyeliner. So the idea of being kind of intentionally unintentional is fun to me, relieves a bit of stress. And I like the idea of incorporating various shapes and colors into your look. Like I said, I'm really tired of everything being so like polished and pretty and clean and like perfectly put together. It's nice to see something expressive for a change. And hopefully this continues, you know, to have a come up. I think makeup is such a fun tool. It's an art form really at the end of the day. So I always love, of course, trends that encourage that, to approach it from a creative, personal lens. Next trend is called Khaki Coated. Dig into fashion's newest find. This year, Gen Z and millennials will embrace a new aesthetic inspired by wonders of the world. Think khaki Bermuda shorts, adventure-ready streetwear, and vests with pockets on pockets. If your look can survive actual desert conditions, you're doing it right. Okay, so this style is very like utilitarian, very outdoorsy. Not exactly my cup of tea. Doesn't really get me super excited when I see this. It does pretty much look like you're going on a safari or some sort of like archaeologist expedition, which I feel like is kind of like limited in terms of styling. Like I don't know how many places and locations you can wear that without it looking like you're like dressed as a paleontologist, you know, or in a costume. And they're very like basic pieces of clothing, you know, but like styled in a specific way, it's definitely giving like, you know, like a scientist of some sort, which is nothing wrong with that really, I suppose. But to me, it just feels like this could feel potentially like very out of place in a lot of different settings. But all around, I mean, like tan, khaki, it's just a color at the end of the day. It's a neutral, so I can't like really say much about that. Don't have any criticism for it. I do enjoy it as a color. I think just styled in this particular way, it's not really something that I would personally go for. But I guess I can appreciate the vibe. Archaeologist, paleontologist core. That's a new aesthetic I haven't heard of, so I guess I will give it a point for originality. Next trend is called Extra Celestial. 2026 Gen Z and millennials are going intergalactic. Think holographic home accents, opalescent eyeshadow that looks like moon dust, and cosmic silhouettes straight out of a sci-fi movie. Aliens have landed and they have fabulous taste. Yeah, futurism. I mean, I feel like futurism is always kind of in. From what I recall of the last trends video I did like this was also like a trend. I think they called it like Y3K or something, and it's pretty much the exact same concept. Silver, chrome, very like early Britney Spears. So all around, pretty repetitious. Very bored by this one. I would like to see a different take on futurism. All around, you know, if this is part of your style, that's fine. You know, again, silver, it's like a texture, it's a color. There's a lot of ways to apply this. And I like metallics and things. I think it's fun to incorporate that. As far as like a head to toe aesthetic, not necessarily something that I'm going to be putting on. Okay, we're nearing the end. I believe we have 2 more. And this one is called Wilderkind. Hopefully I said that right. Wilderkind. Trend that whispers instead of roars. In 2026, Gen Z and boomers will go boomers. It's just funny the way that this is written. I apologize for my giggling. We will go all in on animal aesthetics, but with a delicate touch. Think soft fawn freckles, butterfly wing nail art, and fox-inspired outfits that hint at forest magic. I love this. This is super cute, super fun, very refreshing. Deer print has been on the come up for some time. I do think it's really cute. I do think it's a print you should be cautious about purchasing because things like cow print become very like tossed out super fast. And again, if it's like part of your style, like cow print works well for like Western. Deer print could definitely work if you have a specific kind of style, and it's neutral colors, so it's not very difficult to style, I would imagine. So I do worry about it like in a micro trend sense, but I feel like if you're into this pattern, you're like into it, you know, which is how I feel about it. Incorporating butterfly wings, I love. I mean, if you've been following me online for some time at all, you'll know I love nature. So I think incorporating that into fashion, that's a wonderful, beautiful thing. I love this as a trend. It feels very different from, again, the futurism, the super polished modern aesthetics we've been seeing. It's kind of pulled toward a more eclectic, natural feeling that feels really good to me. Definitely more my taste for sure. But the idea of running around like you're a little fairy or forest creature, not to love about that. Already feel like this is, you know, a theme in my style, but this is something I'll definitely be keeping in mind for 2026. Actually, that was the last trend, I believe. I do believe the rest are lifestyle and interior design. So that concludes the list. That concludes this reaction and this video. Think favorite trends. My favorite trends were Brooched, Laced Up, Vamp Romantic, and Wilderkind. Least favorites were probably like the cyber and blue trends. Just boring. We see it every new year, you know, come up with something different. Curious to know if you like any of these trends. I will say about this list, I like that a lot of it was more conceptual. A lot of it could be vintage or secondhand purchases. So I appreciate that about this list. I do think that there were some fun original concepts here. A lot of it was definitely, you know, recycled. And again, it's like in this day and age on the internet, it's like kind of impossible for anything to feel completely original and unique. But there was definitely some stuff there that felt fresh and fun, and ideas that get me excited to put together outfits for all the upcoming months in 2026. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you made it to the end. Liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, all that stuff really helps out the channel. I hope you have a wonderful year. Thank you again for spending time on my channel today. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!